Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here today. We're just waiting for a couple more folks to join us from the waiting room, and then we'll get started. I'm going to drop in the chat again the link for where you can find today's materials. There are PowerPoints available from all of our presenters, as well as some other resources. So if you'd like to grab them, that's where they're at. And go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat so we can get a sense of who's here today. And we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jennifer Quiroz. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Executive Director of the Financial Empowerment Network. Welcome to our January workshop, Working Families Tax Credit, What You Need to Know. Just a few logistical notes I want to make sure folks see. Go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat if you haven't done so yet, and make sure you're muted. Closed captions are enabled, so if you would like to be able to see those, you can click on the closed caption button at the bottom or at the top of your Zoom application, and you should be able to see those. If you have questions during the presentation today, you can either drop them in the chat or raise your hand. We will have some time for Q&A. We have a couple of different Q&A times available, but also if there's something timely and in the moment, don't be afraid to raise your hand or drop it in the chat. That's fine, we're flexible. All right, so I just want to briefly share a little bit about the Financial Empowerment Network and what we're up to these days. We envision communities where low and moderate income individuals and families are able to achieve financial well-being. And our mission is to advance financial empowerment through partnerships that support access to affordable, effective, and relevant services, products, and resources. So what does that mean? That means that we're a network. We don't provide direct services to community members, but rather we support all of you who are the direct service providers. So I like to say we're the financial educators of the financial educators. And we do that with the help of all of you as well. And so we are so appreciative of the expertise that we have in our community and the generosity of folks who are willing to come and present at workshops such as this and share that with the rest of us. We have a lot of things coming up already in 2023. So just to let you know, this QR code will take you to our events page on our new and updated website. On that events page, you can find upcoming workshops as well as information about past workshops. There's recordings and materials from workshops from 2022, 21, and a few still from 2020 as well. Coming soon, next month, we are very excited about the Identifying and Addressing Barriers to Racial Economic Equity workshop. That's going to be offered twice. On February 8th, that one will be geared towards folks that are involved in Bank On, folks from financial institutions, or who are focused on issues of financial access or financial inclusion. February 22nd is geared more towards direct service providers, folks who might be financial coaches or educators, or anyone who's in a role where you're providing financial education and support to clients. So registration is open. Again, you can find the link to that on our events page, and I'll drop it in the chat when I'm done talking as well. So if you're interested, take a look. Then in March, we'll be doing the Working Families Tax Credit Workshop again. We'll have a couple months worth of experience under our belts. So we'll be checking in on how it's going so far, and also just getting ready to launch into the last month of tax season on March 15th. So if you'd like to join us then, or if you have colleagues who couldn't make it today, they can join us on March 15th. We also we host financial coaches networking groups that meet the fourth Wednesday of each month. So the next one is coming on January 25th. If you're not on that list and you'd like to be, again, I'll drop that link in the chat as well. And then our foreclosure prevention work group meets the third Wednesday of every month at noon. And this month, in January, that will be followed by a training on mediation in housing counseling provided by Northwest Justice Project. So if you're interested in that training, reach out to me and I can get you more information and the information to attend. And last, we are very excited that we have recently launched our new updated website. We've been working on that for a year and are very grateful to many of you who have helped us review the resources and make sure they are all current and complete and up to date So check them out. We also launched the very first Washington State Financial Wellness Provider Directory. And so the link for that is on this slide. There you can find organizations that offer financial coaching, counseling, and education. And if you go there and your organization provides those services, but you are not on the directory, there is a link that you can use to sign up and get your organization added. And as you can guess, I will drop that link in the chat in just a moment as well. So please take a look at all of that. There's lots of ways to connect with us. We have two websites, our fenwa.org, and also we manage the Bank on Washington website as well. We're on LinkedIn and Facebook, and there's my email. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Davis. Thank you so much, Ryan, who is co-hosting with the Washington Asset Building Coalition.
Hi, everyone. Once again, my name is Ryan Davis. I'm the director of the Washington Asset Building Coalition. We are very, very excited to partner with FEN in bringing you this workshop. This workshop was made possible through a grant from the Working Families Tax Credit Coalition, who are large advocates and strong proponents of a strong working families tax credit. They are this year, in this coming legislative cycle, they have two bills that they're promoting, and we are grateful for them for their efforts, and are including a little bit of information about what is happening in the next couple of months in the legislature. So current one TBD is a technical fix bill, which will have a lot of small changes and we hope improvements to who is eligible for the Working Families Tax Credit. But one that is filed now is House Bill 1075, which if enacted will lower the age of eligibility and expand the pool of folks who will be eligible for the Working Families Tax Credit. Neither of these things are current, so we're going to learn a lot more from Katie about what the current Working Families Tax Credit does. And as we look towards the future, we're hopeful that we can continue to make this Working Families Tax Credit strong and effective for the most Washingtonians possible. Tied to this topic and in a slightly different light, Jennifer, if I could get the next slide. Tied to the topic of economic justice and making and ensuring that folks have access to the resources that they need. Two bills that we are looking following and are excited to promote is around the Washington Futures Fund, that is being guided by the Washington State Treasurer, Mike Pelliciotti. Those two bills have been introduced as Senate Bill 5125 and House Bill 1094. You can learn more about this resource and the legislative process that's happening behind this push to bring $4,000 to kids born under Apple Health, making it as strong as possible. You can find more information about that on the state treasurer's website, which I will link as soon as I'm done talking. Oh boy! All right. With that, it is my great pleasure to introduce Katie Koontz, who will be walking us through a lot of the current status and the nuts and bolts of the Working Families Tax Credit and how eligibility and all of that is determined and works through the Department of Revenue. Katie Koontz is the program coordinator for the Department of Revenue's new Working Families Tax Credit division. Katie manages the unit responsible for processing the Working Families Tax Credit applications. She's been with the Department of Revenue for 8 years and came to the Working Families Tax Credit from the department's interpretations and technical advice division. Katie has a bachelor's degree in business administration from Pacific Lutheran University and a master's degree in law from the University of St. Thomas. We will have a Q&A session after Katie's remarks, and I'm really excited to hear more. Katie, take it away.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I'm excited to be here and share with you all about the Working Families Tax Credit. So I have a presentation here that's the Working Families Tax Credit overview. And I also have a colleague from the Working Families Tax Credit joining me today. Her name is Hailey Davis. She's a public benefits specialist in our Working Families call center. And so she'll be jumping into the presentation a little bit later to go over how folks can apply for the credit online through our MyDOR website. All right, so with that, I will get started. Our agenda for today is we're going to talk about what is the Working Families Tax Credit, who is eligible, what do you need in order to apply, how do you apply, and then we'll do a walkthrough of the application. So what is the Working Families Tax Credit? So starting this year, the Working Families Tax Credit is a new tax refund for eligible Washingtonians. The refund returns a portion of sales tax paid each year and is modeled after the federal earned income tax credit. And Washington is very unique in this aspect. We're the first state attempting to do this without an income tax. So that has put us in a difficult position, but we're really excited to get it going. So the purpose is to stimulate the local economy, promote racial equity, and support the financial stability and well-being of low to moderate income Washington residents and their families. This credit program is managed by the Washington State Department of Revenue, and we are the state's tax administration agency. And this is it's a really new area for us because traditionally we've worked with businesses submitting their business taxes. And so this is a whole new customer base, and we're really excited to get this going. Who's eligible? To qualify for the Working Families Tax Credit, you must have met all of the following criteria for the applicable tax year. And in this case, this is for the 2022 tax year. So you must have filed a federal tax return, met requirements for the federal earned income tax credit, or would have met the requirements for the earned income tax credit, but are filing with an ITIN. So currently the EITC does not allow ITIN filers to claim the credit, but the Working Families Tax Credit does. ITIN filers are eligible for working families. You must be at least 25 and under 65 or have a qualifying child. So if you have a qualifying child, there are not those age restrictions, but if you do not have a qualifying child, there are current age limitations. You must have lived in Washington for at least 183 days in the tax year, so in 2022. And you must meet the adjusted gross income thresholds that are shown in the chart to the right here. So there are different thresholds depending upon whether you are filing as a single filing status or whether you're filing married, filing jointly. And then the maximum credit amount varies based on the number of qualifying children that you have. So if you have no qualifying children, the maximum credit you can receive is $300, and the credit does phase out. Anybody who qualifies, anybody falling under these income thresholds, will receive at least a minimum of $50. So even if you're $1 below, you will receive at least $50 in credit. All right. So this program is based on the earned income tax credit. So the majority of the requirements for the program are based on the eligibility requirements for the federal earned income tax credit. And so this is a chart that comes directly from the IRS. It can be found in IRS publication 596, which is all about the earned income tax credit, and it highlights the requirements for receiving the earned income tax credit. I'm not going to go over each of these in detail because that could take a while, and that could take the whole time. So I'll just highlight what's important here. So there are rules for everyone that are shown in this first two columns here. And so the very first thing we need to know is what was your adjusted gross income? And that's reported on line 11 of the 1040. So that's where applicants can, look to see, does my AGI fall under these thresholds? And then there's several rules regarding, like I said, for EITC, you must have a social security number, but for WFTC, you must have either a social or an ITIN. You must meet certain requirements if you're separated from your spouse. For EITC, you have to be a US citizen or resident alien all year. There's no requirement of that for WFTC. It's just that residency requirement for living in Washington. You can't file a Form 255 relating to foreign earned income. Your investment income must be less than $10,300, and you must have earned income. There are separate rules for whether you're claiming a qualifying child, and there are rules if you do not have a qualifying child, such as, so a qualifying child has to meet certain requirements. You must meet relationship, age, residency, and joint return tests. And these are all in publication 596 in detail if you have questions about them. And you can't be the qualifying child of another person, etc. And the last thing is your earned income must also be less than the thresholds, or the same thresholds for adjusted gross income and earned income. But earned income is what's actually used to calculate the credit. So that's income you earn from paid work. You may have other sources of income, such as investment income, but that's not what is used to calculate the credit. So the additional working families tax credit eligibility requirements that we talked about, aside from the EITC requirements, are an applicant must be physically present and reside in Washington for at least 183 days in the tax year. So that means if somebody lives in Oregon and is commuting to Washington for more than 183 days, they don't qualify, because even though they are physically present, they do not reside in Washington. So they have to meet both of those. They have to be physically present and have a residence in Washington for at least 183 days. The ITIN requirement. So qualifying individuals with an individual taxpayer identification number are eligible for the working families tax credit if they meet all other requirements. And the last is that the applicant must file their federal tax return for the tax year for which the credit is being claimed and include that with their working families tax credit application. So starting February 1, 2023, we'll begin accepting applications, and they must include the applicant's federal tax return for 2022. We have an eligibility checker on our Working Families Tax Credit website, and I'm going to take you there now. So give me just a moment as I transition screens here. All right, so our webpage is workingfamiliescredit.wa.gov. And the very first thing you'll see on our homepage is this button here that says see if you qualify. And applicants can click on that, and it gives information about our applications. We start accepting them February 1st. And this is not an exact calculator or anything as extensive as what might be offered by the IRS. It's for informational purposes, and the results that you get from this eligibility assistant are estimates. So it's not going to give you the exact credit amount you will receive. It'll tell you what the maximum possible credit you may be eligible for is based on your income and how you answer the questions here. I'll quickly go through it just to kind of give you an idea. So it asks if you've lived in Washington for 183 days. We'll say yes, because if you say no, it's a hard stop. It'll tell you that you're not eligible for the credit if you don't meet that requirement. It asks if you filed your federal income tax return. Same thing, yes. And so when you check yes, it'll also ask you for your filing status. I'm going to just select single. It wants to know how many qualifying children you'll claim for 2022. And I just want to point out that the maximum credit amount is calculated based on 3 children. If you have more than 3 children, there is no additional credit amount. So that's the maximum. When you fill out the application, you are only asked to provide information for 3 children. For these purposes, I'm going to select 2. So it's asking if my income will be less than $49,399 in 2022, because that is the maximum threshold for someone who is filing single with 2 children. And so I would say, yes, my income is less than that. And to be eligible, I must meet the following criteria. So I have to check all that apply. Yes, I have a Social Security number or ITIN. Yes, I will have earned income from work or self-employment in 2022. I or my spouse am not a dependent of someone else. I have no or less than $10,003 in investment income. All right, so it's letting me know that for 2022, I may be eligible for a credit of up to $900. And so since we're not currently accepting applications, it lets me know to be sure and check back by early 2023, which is now, but we can also sign up for an application reminder. So when we go live on February 1, folks who have signed up for that reminder will receive a reminder via email that they can now apply for the credit. All right, I'm going to switch back to my presentation. So what do I need to apply? An applicant should ensure that they can provide the following information before filing the application. So a copy of the federal income tax return and all applicable schedules that go along with it. Their legal name, social security number, or ITIN, and dates of birth for yourself, your spouse, or any qualifying children. We'll need a current mailing address and a current residential address. And I'll go into this in a little more detail when I go through the application because there are some exceptions to this. Your bank account routing number and account number if you are choosing direct deposit. You can also choose to have a check mailed to you. And then we'll need the signature for the applicant and the applicant's spouse if applicable. So when do I apply? As I've mentioned a couple times, we'll begin accepting applications on February 1st. And applications must be electronically submitted or postmarked before December 31st of each year for the prior tax year. So we begin February 1, 2023, and all the way through December 31st of 2023 is when we are accepting applications for the 2022 tax year. How do I apply? So there are several ways an applicant can apply for the Working Families Tax Credit. The first one here is you can apply online via MyDOR at workingfamiliescredit.wa.gov. And we'll go through kind of what that application looks like in a little bit. The caveat here is that this electronic application is only available in English and Spanish right now. I do want to mention that as I talked about earlier, Department of Revenue, this is a brand new customer base for the department. And our multilingual program prior to this was not great because we had just been serving businesses in Washington State. And so it's been a monumental effort trying to get our multilingual program up to snuff to help people apply for this credit and receive communication in their language. So that's really important to us, and it's something that we're working on. We do have the paper application available currently in 13 languages, and we can translate in additional languages upon request. Granted, there would be a time constraint, about a 2-week period to get that application translated for you, but if there are requests for additional languages, we do want to accommodate that. But currently we have 13 languages available via paper. Those applications can be found on our website or will be found on our website come February 1, or an applicant can go into a local DOR field office to receive a paper copy of the application and application instructions. To the right here, I have listed what our field offices locations are, and you see the little pins on the map there. So these are our offices that are in the state. Currently, we only have actual Working Families Tax Credit staff in Tumwater, Kent, Yakima, and Spokane. We hope to expand that in the future, but any field office you go into can help you with the application. We have staff trained in every field office to help you, so they'll know what to do, regardless of whether there's actual Working Family staff present in that office or not. So paper applications can be mailed in. They can also be dropped off at a local field office. You can also apply via modernized e-file, that's also known as MEF, through third-party tax preparers such as H&R Block and Jackson Hewitt. We've been working on getting those third-party tax preparers on board. I believe there's currently 12 that are signed up to work with us, and those will also be listed on our website, so folks know who they can go to apply for the credit through MEF. All right, I'm going to start walking through the different sections of the paper application. I'm going to go kind of quickly and feel free. We're going to have question and answer session here at the end. So if you have questions, we'll address them. So go ahead and make note of what they are, but we'll kind of sail through this application here. First section is pretty straightforward. We ask that they provide their legal name, select the social security number box if they have an SSN, or the ITIN box if you have an ITIN, and to input that full valid number in the space provided. So if you have applied for an ITIN and have not yet received it, you may still complete the application. What the applicant will do is check this box that says, I am currently waiting for an ITIN from the IRS, because as we know, this process can take several weeks. The IRS currently says it's about 12 weeks. So the application will not be processed until the department receives proof that a valid ITIN has been issued or renewed by the IRS, but you will be able to submit that application prior to the deadline. Even if your ITIN isn't received until after the deadline, we'll be able to process it once we get that number from the applicant. Then they'll provide date of birth. So in that format that's requested, there's just an example of what that looks like. And if you have a Washington state driver's license or ID, the applicant should provide that state driver's license number or state ID in the box provided. An applicant can still qualify for the credit without a Washington state driver's license or ID, but providing this information will help us process the application more quickly. So if you do not have a Washington state driver's license or are otherwise unable to provide one, they can just check the box stating that they don't have it or do not want to provide it. And the reason it's easier for us is because we have an agreement with the Department of Licensing that we can check information through their database. So that makes it easier for us to verify information. The applicant should provide their current mailing address. And this is required. We need to be able to send communication to the applicant. So if the applicant mailing address is a PO box or private mailbox, they'll need to provide a residential address in question 9, or opt out of providing a residential address by checking the box. They'll also provide a phone number and email address. These fields are not required, but of course they are encouraged because they will help us reach out to an applicant if we need to. So expanding on the residency questions, if you lived in Washington for at least 183 days in the prior tax year, check the yes box. If you did not, check no. And if you do check no, please stop there because you're not eligible for the credit. Note, if you are married filing jointly and only one spouse is required to meet that 183-day residency requirement. The individual that does meet the residency requirement must be the primary applicant. So the spouse that is residing outside of the state cannot be the primary applicant. If your mailing address is the same as your current primary residence, check yes. If your mailing address is different from your current primary residence, check no. If you checked no for question 8, please provide your current primary residential address in the space provided. If you are experiencing homelessness or are otherwise unable to provide a primary residential address, check no for question 8 and check the box stating that you do not have or do not want to provide an address for your primary residence. And same ideas with the driver's license, since there is a residency requirement for the working families tax credit, we need to do verification of this. So if there is no address provided, we may need to reach out to the applicant to have them provide some sort of proof of residency. And that could be maybe a public benefits letter issued by DSHS. It could be a letter from a community-based organization just letting us know that they are familiar with the applicant and they have resided in Washington in a certain general area during the tax year. Eligibility questions. So we ask that the applicant check the box that matches the filing status that they use to file their federal tax return for the prior tax year. The reason we have to ask this is because of the special rule for applicants that are married filing separately, because they must meet certain qualifying requirements in order to qualify for the credit. So anytime that an applicant is married filing separately, those have to be manually reviewed by a specialist. In the future, if that is taken away, like I know that's proposed in the bills, this may not need to be a question. So that's why it's currently a question. If you were eligible for the 2022 federal earned income tax credit or would have been eligible but were filing with an ITIN, check the yes box. If you were not eligible, check no. If you checked no, stop here. You're not eligible for the credit. And then that question goes on to list what those requirements for the earned income tax credit are, just as a reminder. But generally, we just want to know, did you qualify for the earned income tax credit, or would you have qualified if you weren't filing with an ITIN? Section D is for spouse information. If there's no spouse or domestic partner, the applicant can just skip this section. It asks the same kind of questions that we ask about the applicant: first name, last name, whether they have a social or an ITIN, and their date of birth. Information on qualifying children. So provide the number of children you have. You will not be able to claim more than 3 children for the credit. For example, if you have 5 children, you list 5 in the box on question 15, but you only need to provide the information for 3 children. And just as a reminder, a qualifying child has to meet certain relationship requirements. And so we list what those are here. A child, stepchild, adopted child, foster child, or descendant of one of these, such as a grandchild, or a sibling, half sibling, step sibling, or descendant of one of these, for example, a niece or nephew. So just because you have somebody that you've claimed as a dependent on your tax return, that does not mean that they are a qualifying child. So a qualifying child is always a dependent, but a dependent is not always a qualifying child. There are some separate requirements there. So we ask for information on each qualifying child. You'll list the legal first name, a middle initial if you have it, and their last name. Provide the date of birth and their social security number or their ITIN, and just inputting that full valid number in the space provided. The next section for qualifying children is checking boxes that describes how that qualifying child is related to you. So we want to know if they're a child, stepchild, or sibling, half sibling, etc. We also ask if the child lived with you for more than half the year. Was this child a student? Because there are different age requirements if the child was a full-time student. Was the child permanently and totally disabled any part of 2022? We ask this because if a child is permanently and totally disabled, there are no age requirements. Did you claim this qualifying child for EITC on your federal tax return? And did this child file a joint return? And the reason we ask that question is if a child has filed a joint return, they're generally not eligible to be a qualifying child. The only exception to that is if they, excuse me, if they were under the income requirements to file a tax return, but they are just filing one to get back any tax that was withheld. In the next section, the applicant will input the dollar amount listed on line 1Z of their 1040 or 1040 SR of their 2022 federal tax return. So this lets us know what their base for their earned income is. So most likely for most folks that receive wages in a W-2, this will be their earned income, but there are some special income situations that could impact this that we'll talk about. And for those of you who don't know, line 1Z is new this year. It used to just be line 1. The 1040 added these lines A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and Z. So now it's 1Z that they will be inputting on the application. We also ask if the applicant itemized their tax return. So if they itemized their return, they'll check yes. If they did not, they'll check no. If they're unsure whether they itemized their tax return, they'll check not sure. So if you itemized your tax return, you would have completed a Schedule A. If a Schedule A is not completed, you did not itemize. And if you're not sure if you itemized your tax return, just check the not sure box. And the reason we're asking this is because applicants who indicate that they itemized their federal tax return will receive a 1099-G from the department, as they may need to list that in their itemized funds that they received in 2022 for the following tax year. So I guess in 2023. Section F. So this next question asks about special income situations that have an impact on earned income. These special income situations should also be reflected on the applicant's federal tax return. So we ask that they read each situation carefully. If any of the situations apply, they'll check yes. If none of the situations apply, they'll check no. And if they're unsure whether any of the situations apply, they can check not sure. But what these special situations are self-employed, if they're a member of clergy or employed by a church and filed a Schedule SE, they're employed by the military and received combat pay, a statutory employee that filed a Schedule C with their tax return, if they had Medicaid waiver payments or received strike benefits. So if they check yes, that application will be reviewed by a specialist and the amount of earned income will be adjusted based on the special income situations reported on the federal tax return. Section G, receiving your credit, select direct deposit if you would like the credit to be deposited directly into your bank account, and they must provide a routing number and account number in the space provided and assure they're clearly written and accurate. They'll select mail check if they want their credit sent to the mailing address that they provided in Section A. If the section is not completed or if the bank account routing number and account number are invalid, a check will be mailed to the address that was provided in Section A of the application. Attachments. So you must include a copy of your completed federal income tax return and all schedules you filed for the prior tax year. So if the applicant claimed the EITC and they have qualifying children, they would have completed a Schedule EIC, and that should be included along with their tax return. Declaration and signature. So that the application must be signed by the applicant and their spouse, if applicable. And they must attest to these bullet points here, that all the information provided is true, correct, and complete, that they have documentation to support their responses on the application and can provide them if requested, that they filed their federal tax return, and included it with the application, and the application is not filed on behalf of a deceased individual, and that they have paid sales tax on purchases made during the period for which the refund is being claimed. And the reason that we have them attest to this is because the Working Families Tax Credit is a refund of retail sales or use tax. And so they would have had to have paid into the system to get a refund out of the system. However, we do not require that they provide any proof of sales tax paid. We assume that if they have lived in Washington for 183 days in the tax year, that they have paid retail sales tax, and they just attest to that fact here. If they've somehow escaped paying retail sales tax in Washington after living here for over half the year, I guess they technically wouldn't qualify because they would not be able to attest to that fact here. Section J is for preparer information, optional section. This is only necessary if they've had a tax preparer or friend or family member complete an application on their behalf. And so they'll provide the preparer's name and phone number. If the preparer is an owner or employee of a business that prepares tax returns, they'll provide the business name and the preparer's email address. If the preparer has a preparer tax identification number, also known as a PTIN, they'll provide it in the space provided there. If the application was completed at a voluntary income tax assistance site, we ask that they please check yes and provide the name of the site below. If the application wasn't completed at a VITA site, they can just check the no box. Section K is for demographic information. This section is also voluntary, but it will help the state legislature evaluate the effectiveness of the Working Families Tax Credit Program. And it'll also help our outreach folks know if there's certain communities we may be missing in our outreach efforts. So this first section here asks if you, your spouse, or children are of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin, and to check all of the boxes that apply. If For the boxes that say yes, Indigenous, or yes, another Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin, if you check that, there's a box there for you to describe what that is. There's also a box for prefer not to say if an individual doesn't want to complete that information. The next section of demographic information asks that you select all races that apply to you, your spouse, or your children. And if you select American Indian or Alaska Native, there's a space to provide the name of the tribe if you choose to provide it. And if you prefer not to say, again, there's a prefer not to say box there at the bottom. The next two demographic questions that we're asking are how you heard about the Working Families Tax Credit Program, whether it was website, social media, another organization or agency, word of mouth, or other, and also to select the appropriate housing status at the end of 2022. And so the options are renter, homeowner, or other. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Hailey Davis now. She's going to do a little run through here of what it looks like to apply on My DOR. And I will control the slides for you, Hailey, so just let me know when you want to move on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So My DOR is going to be a service that they can access through their Secure Access Washington portal. If they already utilize SAW for other benefits with state agencies, they will be able to just go ahead and add that service. Otherwise, they can access and create a login at our workingfamiliescredit.wa.gov. We do have some quick bite videos here on our website. They're about 2 to 5 minute videos to help assist with the creation or quick little troubleshooting videos. So if they need any assistance, they can locate that and be able to kind of help themselves through it if possible. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Katie. Once they do access the My DOR service, their landing page is going to be separated like this, as you can see on the screen. The Working Families Tax Credit is going to land under the Individuals and Families subtab. So this application, once they go ahead and select this hyperlink, it's going to take them to the next screen that will either say Apply or Continue Draft. For new applicants, they will go ahead and select Apply. Next page, thank you. So the first 2 pages are going to review the requirements needed for the application for the applicant to be eligible. The first page is going to be a Before We Begin page. So that is going to cover the main criteria for eligibility. It is also going to cover that this may take up to 30 minutes to complete, and the attachments needed are going to be that they do have their tax return for 2022. And then that following page is going to be in regards to asking questions regarding their filing status. For applicant ID, this is going to include the 2 different types that we do accept. So that will be Social Security number as well as ITIN. As Katie was talking about on the paper application, they're going to have boxes throughout the application where they can select that they do not have or cannot provide or wish not to provide for their Washington State driver's license, ID number, and this will also apply for residential address as well. And then for the ID, there is another box saying check here if you, your spouse, and or your children have applied for ITIN and have not received it. So what's important about this box is for any point throughout the application, if let's say the spouse has not received their ITIN, but they have applied for it, if this box isn't checkmarked here on this first page of applicant ID, it will then require them to enter that. So we want to make sure that this box is checkmarked on this page. That way, anytime an ID type of ITIN is selected, it no longer makes it a requirement and won't stop them throughout the application. We do foresee that that could be something that could happen. So we would just ask them to navigate back to this applicant ID page. No information they've entered would be lost by navigating around the application if they need to correct anything or just ensure they put in the right information. And then we're just going to go ahead and cover some main points of the application. The Next part that's going to be crucial is going to be in regards to the qualifying children. So this is going to be if the applicant does have qualifying children, they will enter how many children that they do have. The first line, they can enter how many children that they do have, whether that be 1, 4, 8. It does not matter how many they include, but they will only be asked to enter the information for up to 3 children because the credit does not increase past 3 children. So for that information, it's going to ask them to go through and enter the information regarding to each individual child. So that would be such as name, date of birth, ID type. Again, for ID type, if it's selected ITIN, but that child's ITIN has not been received yet, we'll want to make sure that box back on the applicant ID page was checkmarked so we can continue moving forward. And then on the right side of the qualifying children, you can see that asks eligibility questions in relation if this is a qualifying child, such as, did this child live with you for more than half the year? Was this child a student? Did this child file a joint return? Throughout the application, they're going to have parts of the application where there may be a hard stop. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that here on this next slide. And a hard stop is going to be points in the application where something that they answered has made it so they're ineligible. Several different points of the application where this would happen is the second slide of the application asks what their filing status was. They can select married, single, head of household, a couple different options. And then there's also an option that states, I have not filed my 2022 tax return. If this option is selected, it will not let them go any further. On the next page, it will tell them they are ineligible at this time due to this reason. Another common one is going to be the income. So when our applicants enter their income, it's going to ask them to enter the information on line 1Z on the first income page. The second one is going to ask for any special income situations and those amounts. And then if between those two amounts that have been entered, the applicant is now ineligible due to income restrictions of the threshold, it is going to give them a hard stop that looks like this. So it's going to tell them, it looks like your income has exceeded the income bracket limit and you are not eligible for this credit. We always advise them, please look through what they have entered because typos can happen. An additional zero somewhere can make all the difference. So we want to make sure that we're using the blue little bubbles at the top there to navigate through that application. And then we'll go ahead and come on down to the attachments page next. So with the attachments, the required attachment is going to show that we do require a copy of the federal form 1040 or their tax return for that year. Optional attachments are going to come up and may be common depending on each individual situation. Some common ones that we may see are going to be possibly power of attorneys. If we have an applicant who is filing with their spouse who is currently unavailable due to deployment or another option that may prevent them. But otherwise they are eligible because their spouse being the primary applicant is a resident of Washington State. Another few different options we may see are separation agreements or custody agreements. Custody agreements, they may just go ahead and attach that if based off of that agreement, they take turns claiming children on tax credits. And then we also may find that we do have quite a few confidential tax information authorization forms or CTIAs attached. And that would give permission to that individual or company to call on behalf of this applicant, ask questions, receive information, and help them through that as well. Following the attachments is going to be these voluntary demographics again. So with these questions, at any point, they can go through and not answer any of them, or they can answer as many as they'd like. We do have the option on all of our others where they can type in a description of that, and there's quite a bit of room. So whatever room that they need, we do have that option if they would like to type something in. Following that, it will also be asking in regards of referral. So how did you hear about us? So we want to make sure we know how we are going ahead and reaching our communities, and then also just housing status. And those are the same that will be asked on that paper application that Katie has gone through as well. The final page, and this page will come after they've already attested that everything is true and accurate. Their attesting page is just before this one, just stating that it's like a digital signature. So this confirmation page is going to be the last page that they will view after filling in all the eligibility questions and providing their attachments. And if they would like to go ahead and fill out those voluntary questions, they definitely can. So the confirmation page is going to include their filing date, the name that was applied with, the delivery method, so whether that is mail check or direct deposit, and then estimated credit. There's going to be this small paragraph that states that the department will review your application shortly and that most applicants will receive a response from us within 30 days, letting them know that their credit is on the way or we need additional information. And if they do have any questions in the meantime, it will goes ahead and gives a hyperlink to a help center that's going to include all the ways that you can contact us. And then as well as our phone number here at WFTC. So that will connect them to the call center for any assistance that they may need. And then to also view the status of the application, after our application goes live, we will have a Where's My Refund module on the website, which will be really great for them to just go on, enter their information, and receive an update there. And then for here, there is also a feedback option where they can give us stars, they can give us feedback on how the application works. So that way, if we see somewhere that needs improvement or if they need more, they would like more language assistance options throughout the MyDOR application, we have that and we can help do better next year. And then anytime throughout the application as well, they can change it from English to Spanish in the upper right hand of the application. So there will be Espanol at the top. They can select that and it will change the language, and then they can always change it back to English at any time as well. And then throughout what we went over, these are going to be some main key points of the MyDOR application, but the full MyDOR application is right around 20 to 25 slides long. That's because each individual section is its own slide. And depending on what your filing status is, or if you have qualifying children, that can lengthen that application process. But as that first page did state, it can take up to 30 minutes, as well as you can always save it as a draft and come back to it at a later time if needed. And that wraps up what the MyDOR application looks like. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Hailey. And as I said, Hailey is a public benefit specialist in our call center, and so they are the experts on walking through these applications with folks. So I really appreciate Hailey doing that for us today. And as she mentioned, there is in development is our Where's My Refund page for the Working Families Tax Credit. We do plan to have this go live February 1st. That's fingers crossed, because we really want it available for our applicants after they apply. So in order, it's unauthenticated, which means that they do not have to have a SAW account or a MyDOR account to use this. And because of that, we ask that they enter some information. So they'll have to provide the last 4 digits of their social or ITIN, their date of birth, and the income that was reported on line 1Z of their 1040. So if you're working with applicants, you'll want to let them know that to have this information handy if they want to check the status of their application. And that's all we have for you. So I think we can jump into our question and answer.
Great. Thank you so much, Katie and Hailey. That was a lot of information. And so just as a reminder to folks, these slides are available. If you aren't going to remember them all, you can always pull them up and take a look at them. There are a few questions in the chat, so I will start going through them. But if you have questions you'd like to ask, you can either add them to the chat or raise your hand and we'll call on you. The first question that I see is around eligibility, I believe, from Tina. And that is if a single person has earned income of less than $5,000 for 2022, but receives Social Security disability, would they be eligible?
Possibly. So they must meet the adjusted gross income requirement and the earned income requirement. So while Social Security disability is not earned income and would not be used to calculate the credit, your Social Security disability could potentially take you over that adjusted gross income for the year. So it'll depend if the amount that they receive still has them under the threshold for AGI, that line 11 of their tax return, then yes, they would still be eligible. I hope that answers your question.
Great.
Yes,
thank
it does.
you.
Thank you.
All right, the next question is around AARP tax aid sites. And Cindy, I think addressed this in the chat, but I just want to make sure. There was that question about if someone, for the preparers, if the preparer was if they had their application prepared at a VITA site, if they are at an AARP tax aid site, should they mark yes or no? And it sounds like the answer is they should mark yes.
That's correct. Yeah, AARP tax aid is a VITA program.
Great, thank you for that clarification. The next question is, will the data be stored on my DOR or in the IRS system? So the application information for the Working Families Tax Credit, where is that stored?
That's stored with the Department of Revenue. We're completely separate from the IRS. We can sometimes view limited IRS information, which is protected under a lot of federal laws. But we do not share our information with the IRS. It's contained within the Department of Revenue.
Great. There is another question about, just to clarify, do you have to have children to apply for this credit?
You do not have to have children to apply for the credit. If you do not have qualifying children, there are age requirements. So you must be at least 25 and under 65. And then the income threshold for folks who have no qualifying children are also lower.
Great. I have a clarifying question, and please, if folks have more questions, add them to the chat. But you mentioned early on around if someone's address doesn't match their mailing address, that a letter from a provider would be sufficient. So for example, if someone is living in a housing program or a shelter or something like that, a letter from that provider would be sufficient to explain why their address is different.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily if it doesn't match. So we have the place on the application for a mailing address, and we have a place for a residential address. It's if they don't provide a residential address, then they can provide a letter stating why, or just something that substantiates that they do have a residence in Washington or maintain residence in Washington.
Great, thank you. Another question came in. The income limits are based on adjusted gross income, correct?
Yes, so that's the first identifier. So that on that first chart I showed that comes from the publication 596, that's really kind of the first thing you need to look at, is does the adjusted gross income fall below those thresholds? But also the last requirement was, does the earned income also fall below those thresholds? And generally that will be the case. If your adjusted gross income falls below the thresholds, your earned income will also fall below the thresholds. But you must meet both requirements to qualify.
Great. If folks have more questions as we continue on, please continue adding them to the chat. Thank you, Katie, and thank you, Hailey, very much for your presentations. We are going to pivot into the next 30 minutes. So we now have this in-depth understanding of Working Families Tax Credit, how to apply, who qualifies, sort of the different routes. But we want to spend some time talking about what that means in practice, right? This is a brand new program. So what does it mean for how we're supporting our clients? What does it mean for how we're talking with community members? And so we have two more presenters who we'll be hearing from who are going to share a little bit more from their perspectives about this. The first is Cindy Gossett with the AARP Foundation. She's the Tax Aid State Coordinator. She leads a team of over 800 volunteers who provide free tax assistance at 100 sites across Washington. So Cindy, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you so we can hear about your perspective. So thank you, Cindy, for joining us today.
Thanks, Jennifer. Let me share my screen. Hello, and thank you everyone for being here today. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about AARP Foundation Tax Aid, who we are, and what services we provide. Oops. Okay. Yeah, AARP Foundation Tax Aid, we are a partner in the IRS VITA TCE program. VITA is Volunteer Income Tax Assistance, and TCE is Tax Counseling for the Elderly. As mentioned, we have over 800 volunteers in Washington. Each year, every volunteer receives training and testing, and we renew our IRS certification. We operate in, looks like 110 sites this year in Washington, primarily in libraries, community centers, churches, senior centers, and we've been doing this work for over 60 years. What exactly do we do? We provide free tax assistance. We prepare and electronically file, we primarily prepare and electronically file federal income tax returns. As part of that, we support direct deposit, which we encourage taxpayers, if they're going to get a refund, that's the fastest and most reliable way to receive their income, a refund. We answer tax questions. So if someone just is working on their own return, or they just have some questions, they can come in and ask those. We don't have to actually complete their return for them. And we help anyone. You know, we have no age limits or income limits. The people that we serve don't have to be members of AARP, so we help anyone who has a tax return within the scope of complexity of our training. In 2019, we filed over 50,000 federal returns in Washington, returning over $54 million in refunds to Washington residents. In that same year, there was $8 million of earned income tax credit for Washington residents. And then this year, in addition to just electronically filing federal tax returns, we will also support the Working Families Tax Credit application electronically in 2023. A little bit more about what we can do. We are volunteers and we do receive training and certification every year, but we have limitations on what we do. We are not professionals, so we don't do the entire scope of tax law, but we can prepare most returns with typical sources of income, wages, interest, dividends, capital gains and losses, pension, retirement income, and so on. We can help folks who are doing self-employment, so perhaps an Uber driver, someone who works as a handyman, or so on. So we can help with self-employment income. We support most credits: earned income tax credit, education credits, child tax credit, credits for other dependents, child care credits, retirement savings credits. We support anyone who wants to do itemized deductions and can help with estimated tax payments. The kinds of things that we can't do are self-employment with if a small business has employees, or if the business operates at a net loss, we can't support that. And also if there's depreciation. So it's kind of some of the more complex sorts of situations around self-employment. We don't support rental income, and we can't help anyone who has either virtual currency investment or transactions. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be at over 110 locations in Washington. You can see if you download the materials that are on that Jennifer's sharing, you'll find a live link to what's called our tax aid site locator. Locator, you enter your city or zip code and you can search to see where we are nearest to you. That locator, I'll tell you, if you go to it today, it's not quite live yet. We're just getting all of our our sites loaded into the system, but it should become live and active probably in the next week to 10 days. The locator will tell you where we are, what days we're operating, what the hours are. They'll tell you whether you can just drop in or if you need an appointment. If you need an appointment, it will tell you how to schedule one. In some cases, you may actually be able to just schedule your appointment right there online. And we'll also tell you a little bit about what to bring. And I'm going to emphasize probably the thing that's the most critical for us, besides just the typical documents you would need to do a tax return. Very critical is to bring in Social Security or ITIN information. The IRS requires us to look at a valid Social Security card or Social Security identification or an ITIN to be able to file the return. Other free tax assistance, I've just put some other links here for other resources. There's the IRS free file, which allows people to essentially file their own tax returns using free software. There's also the free file fillable forms available for the IRS website so that anyone can file their tax return without having to buy tax software. I mentioned earlier that tax aid is a part of the IRS VITA TCE program. There's a link here, free tax return preparation, that tells you a little bit more about what that program is and where you can find resources. The IRS has a VITA TCE locator tool, very similar to ours, but that will also point to other organizations. So for example, I know in King County United Way is a VITA partner. Okay, and that's pretty much all I have. Just I'm happy to be here and answer any questions that you might have.
Great, thank you, Cindy. And so just to clarify, all of your sites are going to be able to support folks with filling out the Working Families Tax Credit application as part of the tax return. Right,
exactly. So our plan would be actually to file that application online. So I think what was mentioned earlier is part of the modernized e-file. We would complete someone's federal tax return, and then that information would just electronically go into the Working Families Tax Credit application. Great. So the online provider that you use is one of them that's included in that modernization. Yes. Okay. Yes. Fantastic. While you were talking, in that link that I keep dropping in the chat for materials from today's presentation, I added links to both the AARP tax aid site locator and the IRS's finding a VITA or TCE site as well, so that folks can find those. Many of the sites are not live yet. This is everyone's busy season, so they're still getting everything in and ready to launch tax season, but check back soon because you'll be able to find those. That's right. And there is a question in the chat. Folks with ITIN status are able to get help with filing their taxes through VITA or TCE. Is that correct, Cindy? I know they are with AARP tax aid. I can't speak for all of VITA. And for someone who does not have an ITIN and needs to apply for one, we can help someone complete the paperwork to file a W-7 to apply for an ITIN if they need one. So yes, we can help people with either Social Security or ITIN. Great, thank you for that. If you have questions, please keep dropping them in the chat, but I'm going to, thank you, Cindy. I'm gonna shift over now to make sure we have time for Levi. Thank you, Levi, for joining us. Levi Merchant is an accredited financial coach with Sound Outreach, and he's been there for 3 years, guiding clients to financial stability and freedom. He also works with the University of Washington Tacoma's Financial Wellness Program to educate students on financial topics and applications. So thank you, Levi, for joining us and sharing your perspective as a financial coach, both on supporting folks in accessing the credit, but also thinking through what that means for folks once they have that, the Working Families Tax Credit and or other tax return money in hand. So thank you, Levi.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, my name's Levi. I'm a financial coach, Sound Outreach. We are based out of Tacoma. And so let's just talk a little bit about guiding clients through the tax credit. So Sound Outreach was established in 1996, and we initially started helping seniors with our services, and eventually moved more towards the financial stability side and all ages and age groups. So we are looking to help people find financial stability and help them become more economically mobile. So we have a integrated service delivery using financial coaching, employment coaching, and supporting with income supports. Now we target mostly ALICE families. So that means asset limited, income constrained, and employed. So asset limited would mean, maybe don't have savings or don't have property, things to sell that they own. Income constrained might be maybe they don't have the education, or maybe they're just stuck in their career. Maybe they have some criminal convictions that are barriers to finding employment. And so kind of that constrained income and looking to move up in their income. And we're looking to help people who are employed and can kind of make a little movement with their money and helping them to gain employment if they don't have it. So we serve all of Pierce County with locations, physical locations in Tacoma, Spanaway, and Sumner. We do both in-person and virtual services, and we serve a little bit of South King County as well. So a little bit more on what we do specifically with our financial coaching. We look at credit reports with our clients and review that and how to improve your credit score and build a credit score. We look at budgets and budget creation and making a plan for your money. And so, that will be involved with the tax credit is making a plan for what you're going to do with that tax credit. We measure where they're at with their net worth and their net worth statement, seeing what assets they have and what debts they have, and looking to make some goals around improving that net worth. We also look at their financial health assessment and kind of gauge how they feel with their money and kind of their emotions around money, how they grew up with money, because personal finance is personal, and there's a lot of different ways to use your money and live your life. And so we take a look at kind of how they're feeling about their finances. And we try to focus on action and guiding them towards action. And sometimes we're accountability partners, sometimes we're just a listening ear, and sometimes we're educators. So kind of many hats depending on the clients. And so we work alongside them to help them take action and make an action plan towards their financial goals. Now, none of that would be possible if they didn't have employment and income to make moves in their finances. So if they are looking to further their career or looking to find a job or trying to kind of overcome that benefits cliff that sometimes people find themselves stuck in, we have our employment coaches team up with the same pool of clients so we can build a relationship with them and help them with resumes, cover letters, job search assistance, and building upon interviewing skills and even doing mock interviews, things like that. So we kind of have this integrated service model to fully help them, guide them to financial stability. And sometimes, while people are looking to build upon their education or gain a certification or just, kind of make do, we help people find income supports as well. So that might be one-time resources. We have a partnership with Tacoma Public Utilities where clients can get a utility credit. So we try to connect our clients to resources like that, and then also connect them with benefits programs that might be longer term that they're eligible for and can apply for. So we want to make sure they are totally set there. You can find us on this information here, Google Sound Outreach. We have our socials, Facebook and LinkedIn. We'll be, I'm sure, posting more about the tax credit and reaching out to people. So you guys can look at this in the presentation later. Now, let's talk a little bit about how we can promote the working families tax credit with our clients and individuals and families. So the first thing I talk to my clients is about being proactive all the time. So I think for us, it's about being proactive as financial coaches and people who very much care about empowering individuals and families with their finances. So be proactive in nature. And so establish that knowledge base, both for us and for the client. So you guys are doing that now. We're all doing that now. I learned a lot already. I thought I knew most everything so far, but so we're learning about that here, and we can pass that on to our clients and help them recognize even just what a tax credit is versus a tax deduction, and use that opportunity to help educate them as well. So we do that one-on-one coaching, and so it's also important for us to look at educating within those individual sessions and really seeing what their situation is. Now we can also do things like mass marketing, distribute flyers, use these presentations and what you learned, pass on information. So personally, I've been able to send out flyers to our clients so far and help them see that it's even available, and help walk them through eligibility requirements and included in our e-newsletter. So I'm going to hit them over the head with this for sure. And so hopefully we can do the same and make sure that everyone who is eligible has at least heard of it and has the opportunity to take action on it and receive this money. So we can help them determine how much they'll receive, and see what range they're in if they are eligible, and of course discuss those optimal options for their funds. So I want to talk a little bit about that and give some ideas, and I'm sure you all have some ideas too. But how can these families leverage the credit? Well, a very important thing in personal finance is establishing an emergency fund. So if individuals and families do not have this yet, I usually suggest that working towards that pretty quickly to build a strong foundation. So again, that opens up opportunities to educate about what emergency fund is, what it's for and what it's not for, what expenses it's not for, and can also open an opportunity to talk about bank accounts and savings accounts, and making sure the unbanked become banked and helping them in that situation. We can help them boost short-term savings, whether it's for a car or a bigger purchase, focus on paying off high interest debt, maybe credit card debt, consumer debt. We can help them build their credit with this tax credit. Now, we can't just pay the credit bureaus off to get your credit score increased, but we can use this money for things like secured credit cards or credit builder loans. So even that minimum, $300, if that's all they qualify for, that right there is typical, secured credit card security deposit. So if they're looking to build their credit, we can talk to them about secured credit cards and how to responsibly use one to build their credit, and use that $300 to put that deposit down. Credit builder loans, for example, could be about the same amount, $325 a month. They pay into that. There might be some fees in there, but at the end of the year, they get that $300 back, and they're using that $300 from the tax credit for a great purpose of showing positive payment history on their credit report. Mentioned opening bank accounts. If they still don't have a savings accounts, it's a great opportunity to have them open those bank accounts with the money from this tax credit and establish some funds there. A big piece of financial stability and stability in life in general is transportation and housing. And so if they're looking to purchase a car, it can go towards a down payment or saving up for a cheaper car. Again, we can use this as education opportunities to talk about the opportunity costs of a loan versus buying in full, talk about interest and what that will cost them, things like that. $1,200, if they receive $1,200, that's a pretty good amount for, an apartment security deposit. That's tough to come by for a lot of families. And so if we can guide them through, using it in that instance, or looking at all of these different ideas and finding the optimal one for them, I think that's a very important conversation to have. And even fun and vacation. I think life's about balance, and some of our clients, they're not overspenders. Their budget is just really tight and they're just trying to get by. And so, personally, I have a 80-20 rule. Of any unexpected income, I put 80% towards whatever financial goal I'm working on, and 20% towards fun, so I can enjoy it and have a balance. So what we can do is provide, maybe these ideas to our clients and see where they're at. And that's why it's important to kind of build that relationship and understand where they're at as a financial coach. And we can guide them towards the optimal use of this tax credit. We might have some time to discuss some other ideas if you guys have them, but that's where I want to leave it. And Jennifer and Ryan, I'll give it back to you guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Levi. Thank you, Cindy. I so appreciate getting to hear from the provider perspective. And oh my goodness, Levi, when last we talked, I miss working with clients, and just your phrase, "What can families do with this money?" That whole slide gave me very good feels. So thank you to Cindy and Levi. With the time that we have left, I just have a couple of quick highlights that I want to pull out from Cindy and Levi. And a couple of things that I want to pass on to you guys taking this forward. And then we'll end with a Q&A, and we'll do our best to get you guys out of here on time. But I know that this was a lot of great information so far. So just two things that both Cindy and Levi mentioned, and Katie and Hailey mentioned this as an opportunity early in the nuts and bolts part of this conversation, is the benefit of having a bank account that you can direct deposit any tax returns and extra tax credits into. Beyond the threat of it's much harder to steal money from your bank account than your mailbox. The fact that we can connect folks with a little bit of extra money in order to open a bank account, or to use this as an encouragement for folks to look for a free, low-cost, affordable bank account is an absolutely fantastic opportunity. So when you're having those conversations with folks, remember that Bank On has certified many local and nationwide checking accounts so that they are safe, affordable, and easily accessible. You can go to bankonwashington.org/accounts to get a full review of some options in your area. So that's just a thing that I definitely want to call out from Cindy and Levi. And as we look forward to ways that we can connect with folks. Levi mentioned connecting and doing outreach and sending flyers around. I want to share two resources for working, sharing information into your conversations with clients and your partners. The Working Families Credit, the Department of Revenue has done a great job of collecting a bunch of materials. You can go to their website, workingfamiliescredit.wa.gov, and their resources tab here has some great materials from social media posts, banners, and posters, all the way up to some videos, some 15 seconds to 3-minute videos, all the way up to a great interactive video to review what we learned here today. And then last resource that I will share here today is the Working Families Tax Credit Coalition that I mentioned at the beginning of all of this, that helped bring this workshop together and is working to make sure that we have a strong tax credit. Also have a whole bunch of posters and resources that you can pass out. Various languages are here. You can get this at wataxcredit.org, or you can Google the Working Families Tax Credit Coalition like I usually do. And you can sign up for updates on how all of this is progressing and any future legislative actions that they are promoting in order to, like I say, keep a strong tax credit available for Washington families. With that, I'm going to quickly scroll through the chat to see if we have any questions for Cindy, Levi, Katie, or Hailey, but feel free to unmute yourself, raise your hand, and give us a shout. Oh my goodness, Jennifer's already put links in the chat. This is fantastic. Okay.
I'm really curious if folks I'm just going to talk over you, Ryan. Sorry.
Please go for it.
I'm really curious, you know, we haven't launched this yet. Cindy and Levi kind of shared what they're doing. They're planning for this. But I'm just really curious if folks have other ideas that you're thinking about as you're getting ready to support clients and community members with the tax credit. Like, are there other outreach ideas that you've been working on? Are there ways that you're having these conversations already with folks or that you're thinking about? It's new for everyone. So I just, in the next, 5 minutes, we'd love to hear what you all are thinking about for this.
Jennifer, I'll give some ideas. Keep in mind that I am from Eastern Washington, so I'm dealing with towns from 130 people to, Walla Walla County is about 60,000. So compared to most of you, it's small. But we're doing a lot of things like working through all of our food banks and our food pantries in 3 counties. I've worked through city government to get information out in the February utility newsletter. The library is going to do a display for me. I've reached out to superintendents to send things home, especially with K through 5th graders, because they're great at taking things home. Reached out to other nonprofits to do presentations and get flyers in their facilities. So I'm trying lots of different ways to get the word out, because I don't have newspapers here are tending to come out once a week. They're not a great source. So looking for lots of other little ways to inform. Oh, and we've got some mobile units, like we've got a mobile library, we've got a mobile health van, and we've got a mobile van that goes all over to do AIDS awareness, AIDS outreach. So sort of partnering with our mobile units who are already out on the road is actually working really well.
Awesome. I'm always, I'm never surprised that Barbara has a great idea to share in meetings like this. So Barbara, you're fantastic and you're wonderful. That is a lot of great ideas. I see something in the chat from Jennifer. I don't want to even try your last name, Messner. If you want to come off mute and tell us a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah. I work over at KCHA, King County Housing Authority. So we were fortunate enough to get some of the material last month, actually. So we've already been plugging it in all of our financial education classes. We also put out a financial bulletin every month that goes out to KCHA staff and residents. So we're going to make sure to put all this information that we got today in there. We might try and work on doing a little bit of some physical outreach with those flyers, and our family self-sufficiency coordinators, they do quarterly check-ins. So we'll make sure that they are working to put that as something do you know of during the check-ins as well. So yeah, when we're over here also just kind of trying to get a little bit of a tax campaign outreach going on. So we'll make sure that all of this is kind of going out when we start educating all of our residents again about EITC, and make sure that's all plugged in as well. So yes, thank you guys for all the information. It was super helpful today.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks for all of those outlets that you're working through. I think we have time for Jean Monroe. Some of your thoughts are in the chat, and we also have a survey there at the end for if you just have a good idea that you want to talk about. We're always here to listen. But Jean, what are you working on?
Hi, thank you. I was just sharing in the chat that we have work study students who we employ at Renton Tech under the Work First program. So a lot of the students don't know they can file taxes. So we'll be making sure that they're, tax returns. So they will be educated with this new tax credit option. And then I was hoping AARP was going to be on campus for free tax filing, but I'm not sure if we're a location, but it would be kind of great to be one. And I'm looking forward to finding out where they're going to be located using their map.
I think that is a great plug. Cindy, do you have a closing thought on where to find our partners?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, the best place is to go to that locator. I don't think we have a tax site at the Renton Technical College. Is that where you are? Yeah, I don't think we have one there, but I know we have quite a few in kind of Southwest King County.
Great, thank you, Cindy.
Wonderful. This has been a very, very full hour and a half. Everyone take a minute and let your brains reorganize themselves, and so that we can go forth in our day and share the good news of the Working Families Tax Credit. Jennifer, is the link to all of this cool stuff in the chat? I'm sure it's somewhere in there. Please go back and review all of this awesome things. Visit the fenwa.org for other awesome events coming up. And if I don't know you, feel free to send me an email and or just throw your email in the chat if you feel like your inbox isn't full enough.
Yes, thank you so much to Katie, Hailey, Cindy, and Levi for your time in presenting today. I know it's like all of your busiest seasons, so thank you very much. Thank you everyone for attending today. I'll send out an email probably tomorrow with the link again to where you find all the resources. This is being recorded, so the recording will be available in the next couple of weeks, so you'll get an email when it's available as well. And hopefully I'll see you soon at another event. Join us, check out our events page at benoit.org, and have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.